Hello students, till now we have discussed up to the eukaryotic cell. Today we are going to see the detailed structure of the plasma membrane, which is also called as cell membrane. As of now, we all know that plasma membrane, it forms the outer covering in the animal cell, whereas in plant cell it is present inside the inner to the cell wall. Okay, so the detailed structure of the plasma membrane was to study the detailed structure. Scientists needed an advanced microscope, and in 1950s, scientists used the electron microscope to study the detailed structure of the plasma membrane. But electron microscope was discovered in 1931, in the year 1931 by Knoll and Rusk. The advent of the electron microscope helped the scientists to study the plasma membrane. But though the electron microscope was discovered in 1931, the studies on the plasma membrane were carried out in 1950s. Okay, chemical studies on the plasma membrane of human RBC. The plasma membrane of human RBC was used initially to study the structure of the plasma membrane, and by carrying studies on the plasma membrane of human RBC, it enabled the scientists to deduce the possible structure of the plasma membrane. Now we are going to study how the lipids are arranged in the plasma membrane. Okay, so plasma membrane is mainly composed of lipids. These lipids are phosphoglyceride. The type of lipids are phosphoglycerides. The lipids are arranged in a bilayer. The lipids are arranged in a bilayer. So we are going to study about one lipid molecule. Okay. Let's take, it is a molecule of phosphoglyceride. So the head, this is the head part, and this is the tail. Okay, the tail is made up of fatty acid chains. Okay, the head is made up of glycerol. Okay, head is made up of glycerol, and a phosphate group is attached to the head. The tail is made up of fatty acid chain, head is made up of glycerol, and the phosphate group is attached to the head. Okay, head is hydrophilic in nature. Hydrophilic means water loving, whereas the tail is hydrophobic, means water hating. Hydrophilic, also polar. The head is polar, whereas the tail is non-polar, made up of fatty acid chains. So these molecules are arranged in a bilayer, and how they are arranged in the plasma membrane, let's see. So this is one molecule of lipid. Okay, this one is another molecule. You can see that the heads are present on the outer side, whereas the tails are present towards the inner side. This is because the hydrophobic tails are needed to be protected from the aqueous environment. So on the outer side of the cell also water might be present. So these tails are protected from this aqueous environment, and also might be inside the cell. If it is a plasma membrane, inside the cell also water might be present. So this arrangement of the lipids in the form of a bilayer with the polar head towards the outside and the tails towards the inner side help the hydrophobic tails to be protected from the aqueous environment. Okay, so these are the main points, that the lipids are made up of the main type of lipids are phosphoglycerides. They are arranged in a bilayer, and the head is polar, whereas the tails are non-polar. Okay, then we will see that later biochemical investigations were carried out on this plasma membrane. So biochemical investigations revealed that biochemical investigations revealed that plasma membrane also consists of proteins and carbohydrates. Now let's see how these proteins and carbohydrates are present. Biochemical investigations reveal that cell membrane is also composed of protein and carbohydrates. Based on the ease of extraction of the proteins from the plasma membrane, they are classified into two types. One is integral proteins and other is peripheral proteins. Integral proteins lie inside the membrane. How they are arranged, let's see. This is the plasma membrane. If the protein is present inside the plasma membrane, then this protein is called as integral protein, whereas peripheral proteins are present outside the plasma membrane. So proteins are classified into two types: integral proteins and peripheral proteins. Integral proteins are those proteins which are present in the plasma membrane, inside the plasma membrane, whereas peripheral proteins are present on the surface of it. Okay. One thing you must consider that the integral protein need not be completely buried in the membrane. They are present like this also. Okay. In this way also. Then also they are considered as integral proteins. Okay. Now we need to remember that in different cell types the ratio of the protein and lipid varies. In your NCERT book, one example is given: RBC. It has, in the membrane of RBC, the membrane of RBC has 52% proteins and 40% lipids. The ratio of proteins and lipids varies in different cell types. It is not fixed. But in human RBC, it is observed that it is 52%. It is made up of 52% proteins and 40% lipids. Let's go on to the next slide. An improved model of the structure of cell membrane was proposed by Singer and Nicholson in 1972. So Singer and Nicholson in the year 1972 has given a model of plasma membrane, that is fluid mosaic model. What is this model? Let's talk about. According to this model, the quasi-fluid nature of lipids. This model says that lipids are not rigid. That it means lipids doesn't retain in this place. They can move laterally. Okay. It enables the lateral movement of the proteins. And the proteins which are present, they can also move laterally within the overall bilayer. So according to this model, the lipids has a quasi-fluid nature. That's why the proteins which are present in between the lipids, they are able to move. Okay. Quasi-fluid because it is semi-fluid like, okay, not like water. So quasi-fluid nature of lipid helps the lateral movement of proteins within the overall bilayer, and this is defined by a term, or it is measured in terms of fluidity. Okay, this property of the plasma membrane is called fluidity. The fluid nature of the plasma membrane is very important for the plasma membrane, as this nature enables the plasma membrane to carry out a large number of functions. The functions which are mentioned in your book are cell growth. Okay, as the lipids are flexible, it is the plasma membrane is able to stretch okay, stretching and remodeling, and hence it helps in the cell growth. It also helps in the formation of the intercellular junctions, secretion, endocytosis, and also cell division. In endocytosis also we know that plasma membrane gets forms an infolding. Okay, so this is possible only because the lipids are flexible or they have quasi fluid nature. And in cell division also, the structure of the plasma membrane or the shape, it or you might say that the membrane may reshape and divide. Okay, so to perform all these functions which are performed by the plasma membrane, as we see, the flexible nature or the quasi fluid nature of the plasma membrane is required. Next we will see in the slide. Another most important function of the plasma membrane is transport of molecules across it. So based on this, plasma membrane is also called as selectively permeable membrane. Why is it so? Let's understand. So plasma membrane has pores also in it. Okay. Different types of molecules may present outside the cell. So the plasma membrane will select which molecules are required by the cell and allow them to pass through. This type of allowing made the plasma membrane, or that's why we call the plasma membrane as selectively permeable. For example, this molecule is needed by the cell and is a good molecule. So plasma membrane will select it, and this molecule, the pore size is smaller and it cannot enter through the pore. But the plasma membrane takes this molecule by forming a enfolding or through the process of endocytosis. The plasma membrane make the molecule possible to enter the cell. Okay, whereas if a molecule is present but it is not needed by the cell, the plasma membrane will not allow it to pass through. This type of nature of the plasma membrane is described as selectively permeable nature. Whereas plasma membrane is also called as semi-permeable membrane. This is because it has some molecules of the size of these pores may pass through the plasma membrane easily. Okay, the pore size here determines which molecules will enter and which molecules will not. This type of nature is called as semi-permeable nature. Okay, based on this nature it is called as a semi-permeable membrane, and based on the selection of the molecules which are required by the cell and which are not required, the plasma membrane selects, then the plasma membrane is called as selectively permeable membrane. Now we are going to see the functions of it. So plasma membrane helps the transport of molecules across it. It helps in the transportation of molecules across it. As you can see, this is the inside of the cell, outer side. This is the plasma membrane. Let's consider it as a plasma membrane. Outer side. It is selectively permeable membrane. Now we may got why it is called as selectively permeable, because it selects some molecules to pass through and others not. Passive transport. What is meant by passive transport? If some molecules pass through the plasma membrane based on the concentration gradient. If this, for example, these molecules are present in a large amount and high concentration of these molecules is present on this side, and here there is low concentration of these molecules. So transportation takes place from higher concentration to lower concentration, and this process does not require energy. Okay, it is allowing the molecules to pass through from higher concentration to lower concentration along the concentration gradient. This type of transport of molecules which does not require the energy, such type of transport is called as passive transport. Neutral solutes, many neutral solutes, they pass similar to this from higher concentration to lower concentration across the membrane by diffusion. by simple diffusion. Next is osmosis. Water. Water, as you know, water is a hydrophilic molecule. Okay. The outer plasma membrane has a double layer. Lipids are arranged in a bilayer inside the plasma membrane. In this form, lipids are arranged. Now, water has to enter or pass through this membrane. How water will enter? Water may pass from here, but here there is an obstruction. It is the hydrophobic part. It is the hydrophobic part. So water cannot pass through this. So this need to be facilitated. If a carrier protein, is there, or a protein is there which forms a channel inside the plasma membrane, then hydrophilic molecules can pass through this protein. This type of diffusion is called facilitated diffusion. Facilitated diffusion is the diffusion when molecules pass along the concentration gradient. Here also concentration gradient is established. Outer side there is higher concentration, and if the inner side of the cell there is low concentration of the molecule, then the molecules move from high concentration to low concentration. This is the simple definition of diffusion. But if a carrier protein gets involved, then such a kind of diffusion is called as facilitated diffusion. Okay. So, and the passing of water molecules across the membrane along the concentration gradient through diffusion is called as osmosis. Osmosis is described as the passing of solvent molecules across the membrane through diffusion. Okay. Till now we have studied transport. Why is plasma membrane is called as selectively permeable membrane? What is passive transport? Neutral solutes, how they pass through simple diffusion. Then we looked at the osmosis. Facilitated diffusion also I have explained that if a carrier protein is involved and the protein facilitates the diffusion of the molecule, then such a type of diffusion is called as facilitated diffusion. Do remember that facilitated diffusion does not imply that it is an active transport. Okay, here also no energy is utilized. It is just a protein has transported the molecule inside. Okay, so it can also be a passive transport. Next is active transport. Active transport is such a transport when, till now we have seen that molecules always pass from higher concentration to lower concentration. But if against the concentration gradient, the transport of molecules has to be carried out, then ATP is required. ATP is required in such a transport. Such transport is called as active transport. Example for the active transport is sodium potassium pump. Okay. So active transport takes place against the concentration gradient. Facilitated diffusion takes place along the concentration gradient. Osmosis also takes place along the concentration gradient. Passive transports also takes place along the concentration gradient. In active transport, the transport of molecules occurs against the concentration gradient. Hope you understand this lecture. In the next lecture we will discuss about the cell wall. Thank you.